Greetings, I present to you the SMK, the Sentinel's Marvellous Kaleidoscope, on CFRU 93.3 FM in Guelph, Ontario, through the web on CFRU.ca, and syndicating across Canada. I am your guardian overseer, Nicholas Cooper. We will be looking inward and beyond along the branches of progressive, fusion, and alternative genres. A wanderlust anomaly, and other unique discoveries near and far. Join me as we gaze into the audible lens out at the diverse musical landscape on the ever-changing horizon. Welcome, my good centuries, to an audience far from the Observational Tower, my music interview series that I conduct here on the Sentinel's Marvellous Kaleidoscope through online channels during this COVID-19 pandemic. Joining me in this gathering is a local Guelph multi-instrumentalist who has been crafting exquisite constellatory songs and pieces for over 20 years now, and with a new full-length collection ready to dawn on the ever-changing horizon. Could you please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and your musical moniker to our audience?
Sure. My name's Curtis Walker. I use he and him pronouns, and my stage name, I guess, is BLUNDERSPUBLIK.
Nice. Blunders. I'm going to, hopefully I will be able to pronounce it clearly, your moniker. So let me try it. BLUNDERSPUBLIK?
Yeah. BLUNDERSPUBLIK.
Nice.
It's an imaginary word, so however you want to pronounce it.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Where are you joining us from?
I am joining us, or I'm sitting in my attic studio right now in Guelph, which is traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, the Mississaugas of the Credit. Should put that out there. And I'm actually not born and raised in Guelph. I moved here, gosh, I guess it's almost 6 years ago now, from Winnipeg.
Well, that's pretty awesome. Awesome. And yeah, your studio setup is so nice and organized, and look at all those instruments.
Yes, within this frame, it's very organized.
Oh, you're hiding the messy stuff.
My digital life is very organized, and my physical life is less so.
Oh yeah, there's both universes, digital and acoustic, physical worlds to keep track of nowadays.
Yeah.
How have you been doing lately?
I've been doing well. Yeah. Today was a great day so far, actually. I got outside, walked downtown, grabbed a coffee from the Common, met up with another local musician named Ben Grossman, local celebrity, if you will. We had a really good long chat outdoors, socially distanced. And it was really nice to talk about, sound and music making with another human being face to face. Yeah.
Oh, that must have been so nice. I haven't seen Ben in like forever. How's he doing?
He seems to be doing well. Yeah. He's working on audio for a dance project that, was happening in real life and transitioned onto a digital landscape. So, yeah, sounds like he's just finishing that up, and he's in good spirits.
Oh, that's good. It's always good to be able to grasp the good things that are happening right now when we have to keep apart from each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I also miss the Common. They make the best fun London fogs. I have not been able to get any other like coffee place to make it as good as they do.
Yeah. We've been ordering like espresso beans by the bag for the period of time that the Common was closed down. But yeah, they're back open for the time being. One person at a time, and in the summer they just transitioned to selling coffee and tea like through the doorway, and it was actually really nice. It was kind of like this idyllic little downtown neighborhood that was happening in the summertime anyways, with everybody kind of outside and like respecting each other's distance and hanging out and having conversations. I mean, that has been happening a lot less in recent months, sadly, but we'll get back there.
Yeah, I guess today has been a signal of spring coming, and so I'm actually really glad that to get that early sign of being able to get outside more and not be cooped up indoors.
Yeah,
as
definitely.
Much. So now I have a fun question and a deep question.
Okay.
Which one would you like to answer first?
Fun first, always.
So I guess, actually, what a coincidence. Speaking of the Common and drinks there, are you a tea or a coffee drinker?
I guess I already answered that. Lots and lots of coffee.
Oh, nice. So what's your favorite type or flavor?
Well, I think in other parts of the world they would call it a flat white, like an espresso with a little bit of foam and milk. At the local coffee shop, it's called the Common. But if I ever travel, to exotic locales like Hamilton or something, I have to say flat white.
Oh, that makes sense. No, I've never heard of that kind of drink. I guess I don't. I'm not as I've started to drink more coffee lately, but I'm not ingrained with the the terminology of the coffee world.
You can go pretty deep into the lingo.
Nice. So for the deep question, a different kind of question that I've been asking lately. What are your thoughts on the power of music?
Well, I can't say that I'm a terribly deep guy, but I think music has a way of, tapping into different places in our subconscious, or maybe like our emotional state, something that's kind of like behind, rational thought, or places that can't be reached directly. And I mean, I think we all experience this when we listen to music. There are moments that are really impactful, and you can't get at why. And I mean, this question has kind of been like plaguing me for 30 years. Like a moment in a song, will strike you very deeply, and you could try and figure out like what, maybe it was that chord transition that is the same chord transition as some song from my childhood or something. But I mean, you'll never really be able to trace the, why those neurons in your brain are firing, or why it's connecting to you at a certain level. So I think all art forms kind of share that. They can get to places in ourselves that you know nonfiction writing or rational thought can't really reach. So hopefully my music does that for somebody.
Yeah, music is very special. Like, as you're saying, has that hidden subconscious power to bring out different feelings and memories um, that are kind of locked from to other like modes of communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question. Good answer. Good answer.
Good question.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something we can probably go on and on about.
Yeah, definitely.
Now let us get to the COVID-19 pandemic checkup. How have you been faring during this whole pandemic so far?
Like everybody, like some peaks and valleys. But like relatively to most other people in the world, I'm probably doing great. I'm surrounded by family. I had a bunch of children before the pandemic happened, so there's like a built-in community in my house. So there's no opportunity to be lonely, which is nice. And it's been going on for quite a while now, so I've had like kind of bursts of inspiration too, actually, over the pandemic. In the earlier part of it, when I guess I was pretty cut off from, like everybody was, from the community, right? I was seeking out other connections online, and so I ended up doing a lot of music actually that was centered around online communities that are intended to kind of prompt inspiration. So I was doing some music with the Disquiet Junto, which I don't know if you've explored that before, that project.
No, I've never heard of that before.
No? Oh, wow, you should go check it out. It's so it basically is every week it's a prompt that's sent to your email, if you sign up for it. And you have 4 days to respond to the prompt in any way you'd want to. And then you post the sound that you've created up on SoundCloud, and then the guy who organizes it makes a playlist out of it. And so on any given week, it'll range from 20 people responding to it to like 65 people responding to the prompt. And closer to the beginning of the pandemic, there was actually this remote collaboration project that happened over a series of weeks. So I took part in that. Probably happened in April, maybe, something like that. And actually, just the second iteration of that just completed too. So the premise is pretty simple. The first week you post some audio that someone else takes and plays over. And then in that second week, a third person takes those two tracks and then plays over that. And then you have a trio. So it was really exciting and inspiring both times. So that was keeping me making music, during the pandemic. And then there's also another community called Battle of the Bits that I was making a lot of music with. And that's not necessary. That doesn't really sound, like your traditional BLUNDERSPUBLIK sound, because it's really premised on like 8-bit video game music, or 16-bit, whatever. But yeah, that was also very exciting. So I was, responding to a lot of the competitions there for a while. So yeah, it kept me going.
Yeah, a lot of online music communities have been developing during this pandemic. I am part of, or I've participated in another kind of online improvisation kind of community called Exit Points, which is based or is organized by a guy based in Toronto. And it's a live streaming event where there's main performers who are grouped together and improvise live. And then there's 2 sets of that. And then the third one is when anyone can join in to collaborate and improv together with the main focus performers.
Hmm. What kind of like software do they use for that?
So it's through Zoom where they meet up, the artists, and then it's streamed out to like Twitch, Facebook Live, I think YouTube sometimes.
Cool. I'll check
Yeah,
that out.
it's been going on now. I think it's over a year now, and yeah, it's still going strong.
Cool. And they figured out how to like solve for the lag, or is it
I
very
believe,
free form?
I believe so. I believe they have they are very technically knowledgeable in that realm.
Cool.
Yeah. And actually, I did from that first group, or that you've been taking part in, like you recording over parts of other people. I have heard of. I think it's in Guelph, the improvisational graduate program. I
Yeah.
forget what that's called exactly.
The
Apologies for that.
International Institute in Critical Studies for Improvisation.
Yes. Good work. Good work. Yeah, so they did something like that. The last group, I believe.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that. I actually took part also in their 24-hour live stream of improvisation music that they took on. It was just called Improvisation Festival 2020 at the end of the summer, and they invited me to submit a piece for that
Oh,
too. That was really exciting, and it included any kind of improvisation that you could imagine, beyond the traditional like jazz free improv, or yeah.
yeah, I did see that. I would be interested in that because I have my own musical persona.
Yeah.
Hopefully this year.
Yeah, get on there next year. They're probably going to be doing it again.
Yeah, I believe so. I did want to ask, as part of the check-in, in your point of view, how has Guelph? Because I haven't been into Guelph for like almost a year now, and other than my connections with CFRU, how has the Guelph community been able to support and help each other out during this time?
Well, I mean, I guess the kind of this selfish example that comes to mind is the all of the support that came out around the Black Lives Matter campaign that kind of really took hold in the summer. And we have a local organization based here in Guelph that was actually like happened to be having an educational campaign, fundraising campaign that was happening from September through to December 1st. And so, I mean, it's self-serving answer because I helped to organize an electronic music compilation with the hopes of fundraising for this educational initiative for the Guelph Black Heritage Society. And so I just asked around. It was a curated call, I guess, and asked a bunch of people if they would be open to submitting a track that they hadn't released before, with the premise that all the proceeds would go to the fundraising campaign, which is called Change Starts Now. And yeah, we got a group of people together, a set of really strong, really amazing tracks that, I mean, rival, music from anywhere in the world, really, I think. And yeah, most of the people that I contacted got back to me and were excited and enthusiastic to help out. And so we really pushed it from like the month of November, and raised $500 in that time. And it's up on Bandcamp. It's called Guelph Tomorrow, the compilation. And of course, like anyone who has bought it after December 1st, the money is still going to the Guelph Black Heritage Society. So I'm just kind of amassing, $50 lumps and then forwarding that on. So yeah, I think that was one way that Guelph has kind of rallied, but there's a ton of other examples. And I think the Guelph healthcare system has really done a great job of kind of coming together and disseminating information and keeping a lot of people safe. And I think relative to a lot of other places, the numbers have been pretty good. And we have the benefit of kind of living in a smaller center too, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I got the album, and it's a really good collection of artists that you were able to get together.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's Kitzel, Transstar, Hymns 57, a Brave Moon remix, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
A variation of Versa. So many great artists in there.
Yeah, and there's a good variety too, like for different styles of electronic music. But I think most listeners would appreciate like the range there too, because at the end of the day, it's all like really solid songwriting, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then putting that for a good cause, pretty much a global cause at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I think that's one of the charms of Guelph that I found, that you guys, Guelph is has both the urban and rural kind of setting. So yeah, like I like that part, and just the community is really great of helping each other.
Yeah, there's a really strong music scene here that I think has been bolstered over the years by like a lot of great festivals that are really well established and really well attended here, like the Guelph Jazz Festival and Kazoo Fest and Hillside. So I mean, it's not really surprising that they're, I walked into a city that had a really like robust music scene already established. That was like a relief for me. Coming from Winnipeg, which also already, has a really great and varied scene and a very supportive scene too.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty lucky.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, the next portion of our talk together has it will be about like background. Maybe you can explain how you got to Guelph, but let me first ask you how you first found music.
Well, my dad is a musician from way back. And, my mom has a love of music too. So there was a piano around the house. There was this very enticing Yamaha guitar, electric guitar, hidden down in the basement. There were early like 70s keyboards and stuff like that lying around. So there's lots of opportunities to explore. So it's like no wonder that I ended up becoming kind of obsessed with listening to music and making music. But I guess it was kind of in around, grade 9, let's say, somewhere around there, that I decided I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And so that turned into like a curiosity around recording, and I was doing a lot of fun experiments with like reel-to-reel tapes in my basement and like karaoke machine overdubs. And then that dovetailed into experimenting with sound on the computer, which back then was like very limited. Like I'm talking about 1994 or something like that. Like I had this epiphany that I could put a CD in the CD-ROM drive and take snippets of samples, and so that's how it started. But these things were all kind of happening and swirling around at the same time, and I was in like little high school bands and stuff like that too. So it was like experimenting in every different direction at once.
Geez, like 1994, I was like 3 years old.
Yeah. No, actually, like my first album was like written in DOS, like not in Windows.
Okay.
In a program called Impulse Tracker. And I was just doing it like it wasn't an album. I wasn't thinking of it as an album. I was just experimenting and playing around and trying things out. And then actually a friend of mine, Arden, was curious about it and listened to it and said, yeah, how many of these songs do you have? You should like put them out. And for some reason, the thought had never occurred to me to do that. Even though I was putting out cassettes like of my other bands and stuff like that. So I do have to give credit to Arden for like putting that I thought into my head that this could be music that other people might be interested in hearing.
Where did the like sense of experimentation come from? Were you just curious what you could do with all the like instruments you had around you and like the resources you could get your hands on?
Yeah, I think that was part of it. But it was also a time when like a lot of lo-fi music was like being put out by major labels, which is was a weird anomaly, to think like in retrospect, to think back on that like, Eric's Trip, for example, they're recording stuff on a 4-track, and then Sub Pop would put it out, or like the first like Pavement album I ever got was just a bunch of like tape deck recordings that sounded, some of them were really gnarly and some of them were more polished. And so I was like kind of obsessively listening to all different styles of music at the time. And so I was experimenting with all of that stuff too. And I was really, really interested in computers, just what computers could do generally. And even like the computer itself as kind of an art making tool or as an aesthetic. That was around the time that like Oval, do you know Oval's music?
No.
He he one of his earliest albums, he put out a couple albums that were just the sounds of like CDs skipping and glitching out,
Uh,
so that like hearing stuff like that was mind blowing, and I was fooling around with those kind of ideas independently, and then you hearing that and being kind of really curious about hearing those sounds. So yeah, that was another level of inspiration.
yeah, being able to hear like what other artists think and what they conceive as music overall.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like especially when you're hearing this stuff at an age where you're just being exposed to like the larger world of music too, and then it's like your mind is just constantly being blown at the age of 17, like, oh, this is possible, that somebody thought of that like 30 years ago, that's amazing, like.
Yeah, it's incredible what humans have been able to make in terms of sounds.
Yeah, and it's incredible that it continues to this day. Like I could hop on Bandcamp after this conversation and probably hear a bunch of sounds that I'd never thought possible. It's really inspiring and exciting.
I guess speaking of inspiration, maybe going back to when you were getting captivated by all the different sounds and the sounds you've been making, what styles of music are you most influenced by?
Hmm. Well, I listen to like every style of music. I think I can't think of one that I don't listen to. Um, but I'd probably say most inspired by like music that isn't easily classifiable, almost, where uh, there isn't like those kind of genre signals thrown in, that like, oh, you're listening to acid music because here's that sound, so where to put this in the record shop. Like there's a lot of music where it's you wouldn't know where to find it if you walked into a music store, and that's very inspiring to me, and it's kind of rare.
Like music that you can't that's not pigeonholed into a genre, like established one.
Yeah, and I mean, I love a lot of music that it can be pigeonholed too, of course. That's not a, a deal breaker for me. But in terms of music making, that's always exciting to me when you're, halfway through a piece of music and then it takes a turn that you never saw coming, and it keeps your ear attuned, longer.
Yeah, being that adventurous kind of style and thought process, I guess, to um, go on like thought or thinking journeys and whatnot.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, you could apply that idea to like the songwriting too, like where if a song takes a turn, in not necessarily in the production of it, but like just in the way that the song is crafted. That's always like really inspirational and exciting.
Nice. What are your, I guess, because you're open to a lot of music, what would be your current favorite artists that you can recommend us listen to?
Hmm. Geez, that's hard. There's a lot.
Oh, I know I know how you feel.
Yeah. Um, I've been really enjoying. I mean, this might be old news to some people, but I just discovered Mount Kimby, that artist, more recently, and I really love most of what they have done. And they're a good example of like kind of genre-defying music. Or a band like Crying, which is less on the electronic side, but still like very exciting. But again, I listen to like kind of every genre of music, so I just discovered yesterday or a couple days ago that a guy I know, Chad Munson, who makes really fantastic electronic music, is also involved in a bunch of other projects, including a fantastic band called the Moaz. They're based out of Saskatchewan, and they have a split album with a band I've never heard of called Susan, and I listened to that yesterday and was super excited by it. So, and I loved the Moaz, and then I loved Chad Munson's music, and then I discovered that they're the same guy.
Oh. Oh, nice. Thank you for those recommendations. I've never heard of those artists before, so I'll have to take a listen.
Great.
let us now talk more in depth about BLUNDERSPUBLIK. You already mentioned that it's a made-up name, but how did that make believe name come into actualization?
um, it's not a very super exciting story, but I was in high school taking an economics class, I think, in the German room, because being from Winnipeg, most schools had a German language class that you could take. So anyways, the German teacher was also the economics teacher, and so there was a bunch of German posters up around the room, and so in my peripheral vision there was always this poster that I don't think I ever intentionally looked at, but I guess it said Bundesrepublik on it, which is a German word. And so that kind of subconsciously like seeped into my brain, and then years later I was riding on the bus in downtown Winnipeg and saw this word again and realized that, I had subconsciously recorded the word as BLUNDERSPUBLIK, and only years later realized that I had completely made that up. But then
you butchered it. You butchered it.
yeah, subconsciously butchered it. But like my tongue liked the way it felt. So when it came time to name this nebulous project that I'd been working on in the basement, that sprang to mind. And I think there was a lot of other, electronic acts using nonsense names at the time too. So
nice. I think it does fit the type of music that you play. Like I'm only basing this off the new album, which you have graciously allowed me to get a peek at. I would describe your music as cinematic electronica, experimental electro, folk pop, and even like prog. So on that basis, how would you describe your music?
Yeah, I struggle with that every day. I discovered on Bandcamp that there's a genre called no genre, and so I've kind of taken that under my wing. Yeah, I don't know. I sometimes use the term computer music, although that has a lot of almost conflicting connotations to it, or electronic music, but that is like super vague and expansive too, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know what to say really, like experimental pop in moments, and then this album has the added complication of like having some vocals, in it, and some guitar too. So how does that all work in? Yeah, I don't know. And then on top of it all, like people don't know how to spell BLUNDERSPUBLIK, so there's no hope of finding it online.
I think the first time I became known of your project, I think I spelt it wrong, and Christopher Curry, the programming director here at CFRU, corrected me on it.
He knew?
Like, yeah, well, he corrected my spelling of it.
All right. Thank you, Christopher.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard, I guess, with kind of expansive, free-ranging, like I said before, constellatory kind of style that you bring together. It's hard to categorize. And that's also tough for when you're trying to promote to people who aren't open to the openness, I would say.
Yeah, and then like on top of it, like genre names keep changing too, and 10 years ago I maybe could have called it like bedroom electronic or IDM, but even then, it's not dance music. I challenge anyone to like dance to this album. Really. And then all these labels become kind of passe, you know. So you sound like a 42-year-old man if you tell somebody that you make IDM.
For your currently, what does your instrumental arsenal look like?
Hmm. It it changes for every song, and that's not necessarily like intentional. Um, but you can kind of see some of it, the more recent stuff in the background. But it kind of depends where the idea comes out first. So I'm probably most comfortable on the guitar. So a lot of times, a chord progression or a melodic idea will come out on the guitar. But depending on my mood, I might like convert that to, an arpeggio and then sample it into the computer and then, chop it up or reverse it. So where the initial seed of an idea comes from for any song often has no relation to how the song sounds at the end. And actually, a big part of my process is actually to compose like the narrative of the song as I'm assembling it. So it's very different from like a band scenario, and I've been in bands too, where you kind of like hash out the idea, perfect it, and then record it. But like in BLUNDERSPUBLIK case, the recording of it and the sequencing of it and the arrangement of it is all kind of happening at the same time, and not even in a linear sequence necessarily. Like the idea that I start with might end up being the reprise at the end of the song, you know. So I never know where a song is going to end up when I start it.
Hmm. That's interesting. So you would say your composition process is really through composed? Like you don't have a definitive like end point to a song or a piece?
Yeah, yeah. And like sometimes I'll be surprised by what happens through the process of putting a song together. Which I maybe to somebody who like makes a lot of music is more obvious when you listen to it. Especially in this album, like even if I'm looking at the waveform of a specific song, you can kind of tell that I'm I'm trying to mess with myself as the song goes through, or like trying to like contradict the all of the safe assumptions that I would probably typically make in a song. So like Summer Glow, which is one of the songs, has a music video with it. It starts off kind of ambient, and then there's acoustic guitar for a little while, and then the song falls apart, and then there's kind of this like new wave exercise video P part that comes up before it like disintegrates into like to glitches. So you can tell that I was really bored with like a conventional song structure of like a intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro thing, or like the ambient version, which is like a lump of increasing sound that decreases.
No, that's great that you're able to freely like go on an unbeaten path that you don't even know where you're going. So actually, I want to ask maybe if I'm wording it right, how do you allow yourself that mind frame to just journey out and being able to like piece different sections or sounds together like that?
Well, it's really like what I'm trying to do when I put a song together is like to entertain myself, you know. Like not with the finished product, but like I really love the process um, of making music and thinking about music and assembling a song. So like that, and that's why I had an album before I even thought about putting an album out. You know, like first and foremost, it's about the process of making the music. So you know, again, I don't have that goal in mind where like I'm gonna create a really pretty pastoral ambient piece with these three, you know, sound sources. I don't go into it like that. I'm like, you know, what's exciting to me, you know, or and because of that, I have also 100 songs that are kind of half done, or like I got to a place where, you know, the song itself wasn't inspiring me to pursue it in a different direction. So it's like, yeah, okay, I'll move on to the next song, you know, because there's never a lack of ideas for songs. If anything,
Mhm.
there's an oppressive amount of ideas.
Like I actually like at this time I really understand actually that feeling with my own music project, my solo project, Pier Zulvai. Um, for me, I do try to work with some ideas, but I think my idea gets changed once I start working on the process, like with the process, like starting with or going on to different sounds or what I'm able to produce with the equipment that I have with me.
Yeah, and that kind of gets back to the idea of like music tapping into a different center of the brain. You know, like you rationally set yourself up to head in this one direction, but then your fingers and your body and your brain, you know, having this conversation without the rational part intervening takes it in a whole different direction. Anyways, you know, that's great.
Yeah, I think I have to give my unrational part more freedom to do what it wants.
Well, it can probably bully the rational side into submission, anyways, right?
Oh, for sure. So let us now talk about the new album. What is it called?
It's called Trackers Trails.
It's your first new full length album since 2012's Barren Immunity. Has there been a big change in your sonic tapestry between this stretch of time between those albums?
Well, interestingly, some of these songs actually predate Barren Immensity, even. Um, and but I loved these songs so much that like I felt very intimidated about putting them out. Um, and so Barren Immensity, I actually put that together because it was more of like a single uh, idea that I wanted to explore, of trying to make more minimal music than I had ever made before. Um, so these songs in Trackers Trails actually span like a very long period of time, um, all told. Um, so Barren Immensity, which I love that album, um, but that's actually maybe more of an anomaly where I was trying to be really minimal with the sonic tools that I used. And then this is more of like your like typical Blunderspublik album where there's a lot of different sonic elements and a lot of layers happening at the same time, and kind of more complexity in that narrative over the course of a song.
Yeah, I did get that sense from listening to the album. Like it's very like detailed and very picturesque in the production and the like the textures that you were able to create.
Thank you.
Like so as you said, and also quoting you from the Bandcamp description of the album, every song on Tracker's Trails assembles a unique song palette and chooses its own path. Was the timbral distinction between the tracks a critical aspect of the albums? Of the album, I mean.
It wasn't intentional, but the timbres that end up informing like the tracks that make it onto the album are always like, I'm always really intrigued by them or excited by that nugget or that central sound, and so it builds around itself into a full length song. But like I said, with any one of these albums, I don't start on a specific date and say like I'm going to create an album over the next year. These songs like happen when they happen, and there's songs between them that don't work, and so it's always interesting to me at the end when I've like assembled 11 tracks. It's kind of a fascinating part of the process is then to actually like try and fit them all together as a puzzle, and working on the track order teases out like this, this kind of emotional journey, for lack of a better word, that happens over the course of an album. And it's kind of like looking back in retrospect, to see where your musical instincts more often direct you to, like for, I put these 11 songs together and then realized that the vast majority of them were like kind of dark and brooding sounding, in more upbeat or downbeat ways. So then you're like, okay, how does this puzzle fit together, to keep people listening, and not to depress them too much, unless they enjoy that feeling.
I think that's what the kind of the proggy aspect, I think that's what comes in for me. But I think I like that part, that like that atmosphere in some of the songs.
Yeah. I mean, I always gravitate towards that kind of atmosphere that's neither like saccharine sweet or like completely sad or angry, but this strange middle ground that allows the listener to like kind of feel how they want about it. Like a lot of space for like emotional interpretation, I guess.
Yeah, that's also good to have the listener interpret your music however they feel.
Yeah, you have these, you create these precious little songs, but you have at a certain point you have to let them out into the world, and they live their own life, at the ears of other listeners.
So how far back do some of these songs originate from?
Well, the name Tracker's Trails is actually a reference to the fact that all of these songs came after I stopped using trackers, which is like one way of making music on a computer, like one class of software, I guess, that you could use. And the kind of software that I started with. So I would guess some of them could be, well, maybe like the oldest song might even be like 12 years old. But I mean, that's just between you and me. And
in our
also,
audience here.
the good thing about making genreless music is that it never sounds old, you know.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
I wasn't
That's a good
using
way of saying it.
Yeah, I wasn't using a bunch of the reference of 2008, you know, to sell these songs. Although, you know, there's a few moments where I'm slightly embarrassed of the vocals. But you know, like, and I think this is actually good. But for a lot of these songs, I actually don't have the stems, you know, or like the layers of these songs anymore. So I couldn't just infinitely tweak them and remix them and replace sounds with other sounds. At a certain point, I just had to, you know, recognize that this is the song and this is how it stands, and there's not a lot I can do with it other than kind of master it and bring out certain qualities of it. But they're done, so put them on an album, you know. It's cathartic putting an album out.
Oh yeah, that's great. I haven't had that feeling yet, but
Do it.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Or I wanted to ask, as what are some of the? I think you talked about some of the interesting sounds that maybe you kind of centered on a few songs. Maybe certainly like your vocals. What are other examples of like instruments or songs that you are like proud of finding and bringing out in this album?
That's a good question. Well, one of the coolest ideas, if I can toot my own horn for a moment, on one of the songs called "Run and Run," I found a sample from an old '60s album. I'm 90% sure it was from an album by a band called Skip Bifferty, and the sample is just somebody like strumming a harp, like every string on the harp, you know, from low to high. And I had this idea. It was a chord progression that I had written on guitar, but I had the idea of like, if I can make really thin bands, frequency bands on an EQ, a parametric equalizer, I can create these chords that I've written on guitar. So that song starts with the sound of this harp, with basically what I'm doing is like taking a bunch of the strings out of the harp and leaving only the strings that I want to ring out. But because it's a sample, it sounds weird, and it never, like, you can't really pull out all the other strings. Computers are not that magical, right? So there's a lot of leftover resonances and things like that, which makes it a sound that is completely unfamiliar. You know, and that I always love to hear sounds like that, sounds where you can't trace the source back. There's no like sonic reference that immediately like comes into your brain and kind of, because I think in a lot of instances that just like simplifies the sound, you know, to hear a dog bark and to have the idea of a dog in your head leads you to not really explore the actual timbre of the dog bark, you know. So if you can't place a sound, I think you're more attuned, and of course your brain is doing the work of trying to figure it out, what it actually is. But yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of the songs on the album are really unique in how all the sounds are arranged together. Maybe another quote from the Bandcamp page on the album. A common thread for all the tracks is the attention to narrative that each track moves through and a layered space that the listeners can explore. So could you expand upon this and on what narratives are being presented to the listeners?
Well, that gets back to that idea that I was talking about earlier, where a certain motif will be introduced, for example, and then like sabotaged, so that if you're expecting the song to go in a certain direction, it's going to take a left turn, and that was what I was doing, sitting in the studio to kind of keep myself entertained, to keep myself like on my toes, like kind of doing this. So like a lot of those, a lot of the journey of the song is, actively trying to kind of subvert what came before it, and keeping in mind that in terms of like musical conventions, I'm not super adventurous, so I don't really change tempos very much. I'll never like change the key signature of a song. I kind of hate that. So I'm working within these confines that are just rooted deep in my interest in music. But then, within those, trying to surprise myself. And then the idea of the space of the listener is, I just have always loved. I remember specifically like listening to Mouse on Mars. They have an album called Aura Tahiti, and I'd listened to it a few different times already, and then I was listening to it one time and thinking like, there's a melody here that like has never consciously registered in my brain. It's not at the forefront of the song. It's kind of like lingering in the background and like weaving in and out with all the other sounds. And I mean, our brains are magically adept at teasing out a lot of like musical rules that we don't even consciously know. But that was an exciting moment for me, and so I do try to emulate that a lot, where like a song sounds are kind of hidden or blended inside other sounds, and if by chance somebody listens to the album 3 times, hopefully it's rewarding on the 3rd time.
Yeah, like I think I know I need to listen to it a few more times because it's because there is a lot to digest, but that's for me that's a great I really like that in music, to be such like a very involved and a very like a journey, pretty much. Like it's really like a journey across lands and magic.
Thank you.
Or I did remember now that you said the narratives came out in the process of you composing these songs and pieces. So what narratives, if there are literal ones, which ones did come out?
Oh, literally? Yeah, so strangely it's pretty rare that I work with vocals, but there are coincidentally like vocals on maybe almost half of the songs here and there. And so the Summer Glow is like a good example of that song is just about a specific day where I was just sitting outside with my toddler back when I only had one child. And it was a beautiful summer day in Winnipeg. and it was like a moment of, silence and contemplation, and one of those moments where you're aware that it's special, and you're really trying to like soak it in, like, please retain this moment memory, and I don't know if that it probably never works, but it does work if you turn it into a song. So I wrote lyrics about that moment, and um, the experience of like hanging out with a toddler who is so present in their environment, and you can almost feel them like soaking in every element of the environment, like the sunshine, the grass, the shadow from the leaves, the sound of the seagull overhead, you know. So it was just this really attuned moment that I wanted to try and capture forever.
Yeah, that does sound like a special piece, being able to try and emulate back to a time where like you weren't boggled down by the current adult life and just be in the moment of nature and whatnot.
Yeah, and I guess like Run and Run has elements of that too. Um, the idea just to be of being like completely present in a moment and not distracted by a myriad of other things, which is so easy to do right now,
So
especially.
yeah, so easy nowadays.
Yeah, but having one-on-one conversations is actually a good way to get around that too.
Oh yeah, like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Is there any other facts or tidbits about trackers, trails that you want us to know?
Hmm. Um, I don't know. The the cover art is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's a tree that I grew up beside in the Whiteshell Provincial Park in Manitoba. So that might be relevant to some listeners. It's definitely relevant to me. Yeah.
That harkens back to childhood era of you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that tree has been there my entire life, which is it's a strange thought, that we've kind of like grown up together almost, even though that photo was taken before I was born.
Oh, yeah, quite special. Like a overseeing life form.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was hanging out for all my special moments.
Oh, that's quite special. Yes. Why don't we now start wrapping up our time together, Curtis?
Sure.
Um, when will Truckers Trails be released?
I'm putting it out on March 4th, uh, the day before Bandcamp Friday. Wink, wink. Um, but you can go find it on Bandcamp right now, and you can listen to two of the songs. And you can go to YouTube and watch that music video that I was talking about.
Oh yeah, the music video is now out. Like it's on your personal YouTube.
Yeah, and sadly, it's on Facebook too.
Do you have any other plans of like other videos or any special stuff for the album?
um, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep, hitting the pavement and talking to people, and I have the privilege of I've been involved with three different campus radio stations over my long life so far. So I have friends who are radio DJs, which is a total blessing. So some of them, present company included, have a copy of the album now, and so hopefully people get to hear it. I mean, that's all you can wish for as a musician. It's like that people hear it and give it a chance. It feels almost arrogant to like release an 11-song album in this day and age, but but it's only 41 minutes. People can get through it, and so thank you for helping me to have it reach people's ears.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be able to help you promote this like amazing album, and certainly I'll be keeping track of your musical journey from now on.
Great, thank you.
Speaking of keeping track of you now, do you have any, or is there any future plans for BLUNDERSPUBLIK?
Well, I have a whole other album sitting on my hard drive. But it's like a different side project. I gave myself the challenge of trying to make like more minimal synth music. So I have a set of those songs, and I've been toying with the idea of like releasing them under a pseudonym called Murmurer. So equally hard to pronounce as BLUNDERSPUBLIK. So, if I work up the courage, I might send that around to some people and see if anybody likes it. But my curiosity is still like bubbling over, so there will always be a BLUNDERSPUBLIK as long as I have the time to get into this space and play around.
Yeah, that sounds. I can't wait to hear that. How can our audience find and support you in your music?
Well, first you figure out how to spell BLUNDERSPUBLIK, and then then you can go to Bandcamp. And my entire catalog is not on there, but a good chunk of it. And I have the YouTube channel and have the Facebook, and I have a Twitter, which is like not super serious. It's more for jokes, but if you're curious about the music, Bandcamp is always the best place to go, I think. And I think that's true for any artist really who has a Bandcamp.
Totally agree with that, Curtis.
Yeah, and like if you don't want to buy it, even listening to it will warm my heart.
My last question for you: what are your words of wisdom for us?
Oh geez. To listen, I guess. Maybe that's something that any musician would say, but, and it sounds, oxymoronic after I just talked for an hour. But I think everyone would be better off spending more time in their day, actively listening. And I don't necessarily even mean music, or you can go to the woods and listen, or walk down the street and listen. But yeah, I think it's a good practice.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Curtis. Thank you very much for this chat today.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Very fun. Thank you.